You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. So we dropped last week's episode about the landfill, and very shortly after, Adam Corey from the acting superintendent of Wycomico County actually reached out to me and had a great conversation. Went out on Friday to take a tour at his invitation of the landfill. I got to see a lot of the compliance issues that he has addressed, but also really to be there to talk about Cell 7 and Cell 8 as we're running out of space. The interview I did with Adam Corey, I'm going to air as a separate episode. I've talked to PAC 14, and they're actually going to air it so that we don't have too much information in this one show, but it was a great visit. To talk about the presentation that was done at the work session on July 15th and our present concerns, brought in Mr. Jim Atkins from Mardella, Mr. Mike Goldberg from Delmar. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out.
Glad to be here, as always.
So you all were at the work session yesterday with the county council and Mr. Adam Corey to hear more about the current issues at the landfill and the timeline for construction of Cell 7.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was pretty lately attended by the county executive and her administrative staff. Is that accurate?
No one from the administrative staff was there. The highest ranking person, I guess, would be the managing engineer, who was the previous person in charge of the landfill.
Yeah, but she didn't get up to speak.
She didn't participate. She just sat there and
was not invited up to the table, so there was nobody from the executive management staff, including the county executive herself, attended.
Well, and that's interesting because on June 30th at the county executive's press conference that was attended with Mr. Adam Corey, that kind of got us this ball rolling. It definitely seemed like Julie Giordano was going to be at that meeting. She stated that they were going to have a work session with the county council to address the legislative issues.
We requested a work session to deal with this specific issue.
This specific issue, we were at a point where we felt most comfortable after meeting with MDE, after meeting with our attorney, and this takes a little bit. This takes a little bit of time to put something together to really figure out the best course of action. So actually, the request was supposed to go in because we were going to be meeting in the middle of July for a work session.
This is their last meeting before August 1st when she has the phase closing of the landfill starting on the first Saturday in August.
yes.
Well, she declared a crisis and then was AWOL from, actually doing something about the crisis. She was gone.
Well, I think I would say until there's a crisis, there's really not a need.
So we're going to bring in Councilman Jeff Merritt to talk about the present situation, the emergency legislation, and then also I want to bring you back in, Mike, to talk about the construction, that process, because I know that flows very much into your work experience and your background. But as a layperson, as a citizen, did you feel like you got the information that you were looking for after hearing the county executive's press conference on June 30th and hearing that we may be running out of space sooner than later on the landfill?
Well, the press conference left me, rather, baffled. There was, it was at the press conference that she presented her plan to phase in closure of the landfill. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to put this gently. That is just the most ridiculous plan I've ever heard.
Because the trash that we don't bring on Saturday won't magically show up
in there. I mean, it doesn't take an engineer or a rocket scientist to understand that. So I have no idea what her motivations are.
There is one other possibility. And I'm going to show some pictures from off of Shavox Road and Forest Grove Road in Parsonsburg. And the county is working through this at this point, the sheriff's office and some of the folks of the county. But there's a gentleman over there who is just dumping trash in a yard that he actually doesn't own. I just can't even imagine him living next to this.
No,
but this could be our new reality.
And that was addressed yesterday by Councilman Holloway to Adam Corey.
Yeah.
About somebody needed to get involved in it because he was having, as a council person, he was having a hard time getting anybody to react to it.
My understanding is as of Wednesday, July 16th, there is a reaction to it. So
Mr. Corey assured him yesterday that he had the right number and the right person to call to have it addressed.
Okay.
And so,
that builds confidence. So what's your takeaway from the presentation?
The interesting part about it was it all over the past month has been a surprise that we've gotten in this position. We weren't here. We were good for 3 to 5 years, and now all of a sudden we're not going to make the next year. And how did this just pop up out of nowhere? Well, the last 5 minutes of the probably hour and a half presentation was a question asked by Councilman Ennis, plans that were drawn up and approved in October of 2022.
Yeah, and
Two and a half years ago that were approved.
And he asked this of Adam Corey. Correct?
Yes.
So what was the response?
Adam acknowledged that he had found a document. It was planned and approved in 2022.
Cell 7, we're expediting the best we can. Was it in fact way behind the timeline?
I actually was reviewing a letter that I thought about putting into this slideshow. There was an authorization to proceed in October of 2022 for Cell 7. Yeah, for that.
Authorization to proceed.
Yeah, not necessarily with construction, but would have started the process we're working on with Darrell. That was October of 2022.
Now, the permits weren't issued and the things that the state needs to do, but the county had approved that we're going ahead with Cell 7.
Design was deferred for about 18 months, and that's all throughout the current executive administration.
You know what's interesting there is you talk about the first quarter of 2023. By July of 2023, we were having issues with the confirmation process of Matt Leitzel and Heather Langford. And she got up to speak at the county council meeting in July of 2023. She was actually very much in charge of running the landfill. This is something that she was doing.
Yes.
Heather Langford, pretty hot topic of today's agenda. I have been in the industry for 16 years. I have a degree in civil engineering, structural concentration, mathematics minor. For some reason, I'm standing here told I'm not deserving of a position. Right now, no one will be running public works, the landfill, the convenience centers, the roads division, the engineering division, the sanitary district.
I know we have to focus on where we're at and what's a forward momentum, but we do need to talk about why we got here. And you're talking about plans that were put in place before our current county executive took office, an actionable plan. Adam Corey at my visit last Friday talked about how the phase 2 and phase 3 permits were already approved from.
Well, you have to look at it. Whenever you have a change in leadership, things fall through the cracks. But in this situation, when you went from Executive Pasota to Executive Giordano, which is when this landfill situation seems to have fallen through the crack, the only thread that runs through the entire thing is the acting director of Public Works, Heather Langford, was in that position the entire time. So September, when the original drawings were approved, and then when December, when Giordano comes into office, it's the same person running the landfill the entire time, and the same person who ran it all the way up until 2023 and was so indignant with the council during public comments that the council would not approve her being appointed to deputy director or director because she didn't have the qualifications. Well, excuse me, when you see the situation we're in now, and she openly admits that she was in charge of the landfill in 2022, apparently she wasn't qualified.
And it goes beyond just her admission that she was in charge of it. Now, I've reviewed some documents from the Maryland Department of the Environment, and she is listed as the contact person for the landfill operation.
Well, and there is another person, too, who deserves some scrutiny, and maybe not today, but in the near future, is Wayne Strasburg.
Yep.
Now, this has come up because the county council has introducing legislation to have some level of control, or at least confirmation of professional contracts. Current county executive has hired him as a consultant for the landfill. This she even addressed in her.
Well, that's one of his many duties as he's been. I mean, he was hired to do the SWOT analysis for the county. Yeah. He's been in the landfill. I mean, he's been working for the for the county as a consultant for over 2 years now. It's different projects.
We're paying a consultant who failed to perform, and we continue to pay a consultant, that same consultant, for additional work on other issues.
But he wasn't even at the work session on July 15th.
He wasn't there.
No, but he was at the press conference on June the 30th. Did we pay for that?
And another person who was noticeably absent is the Director of Administration, Bunky Luffman, who was also charged with the responsibility of oversight on the landfill. We have people in this administration today who have palpably failed to get this job done.
To Adam Corey's credit, and I saw it with my own eyes, noticeable changes out of the
Yes.
landfill. And I even got a chance to talk to some of the other trash haulers that were there, and found some positive feedback in that regard, just the basic operations of the landfill. But in the meantime, in the last 2.5 years, we have worked tirelessly, the executive has worked tirelessly on liquor bills, on other campaign promises that made by her campaign donors, and also running things like Safari at the Quarry. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. She's made the statement recently that she has fulfilled her campaign promises, but those campaign promises were made to her friends and her political contributors. She's also recently made the statement, and it was at her press conference, that she's here to represent the interests of the 104,000 residents of Wicomico County. Well, Madam Executive, I beg to differ with you.
There weren't 104,000 at the council meeting on July the 15th, but there were several county residents there that did not see any executive office people in there representing them or standing up for them.
Well, I want to bring in Councilman Jeff Merritt, and I want to ask him, what he got from the presentation. He also went on a tour just today, July 16th, of the landfill. And then what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about that presentation and the construction, and then come back and see if the three of us still have unanswered questions. Can you all stick around?
I certainly can.
All right. Jim, you stay, and we'll bring in Councilman Merritt, and Mike, we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay.
So stay with us with Open Agenda. When we come back, we'll have Councilman Jeff Merritt, and we'll get to ask him his take on the landfill presentation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. And as we've seen the presentation from Adam Corey in the Department of Public Works at the July 15th work session, we still do have more questions, and I'm sure the folks out there want to hear how this phased approach of the landfill closure may impact them. In order to talk about that, I brought in Councilman Jeff Merritt from the 2nd District. Thank you. And Mr. Jim Atkins from Mardella. Thanks for sticking around. What amount of information were you able to get out of that presentation from Adam Corey and that group from what you were looking to find out?
I think a lot of the dots were connected.
Okay.
We were wondering how serious the problem was, but looking at the information that was presented yesterday in the work session, it is clear that we're in a pretty serious situation. It was also clear that up until fairly recently, we were all working on information that might not have been as accurate as we once thought.
Slide that shows geosyntax former. This is on some of the slides that Mr. Illuminati was showing you as far as previous estimations on remaining capacity. Back of the napkin approach, that was literally a quote from one of their staff members when they were on retainer for us as an engineering firm without any aerial survey.
Unfortunately, decisions were based on that information, and now here we are.
Well, the county executive said at her press conference on June 30th that she was planning on this work session with the council. Was she and her director of administration, were they able to fill in a lot of the blanks at the presentation yesterday?
They weren't there.
I saw pictures of her at the White House yesterday. So is this a real crisis, or is this, I mean, you're saying that we're in deep trouble, but is this a real crisis or not?
No, I think this is a real crisis.
Okay.
I took a tour of the landfill. From up on top of the hill, it's very clear that we don't have a lot of room left.
Okay.
And there's another cell that's yet to be constructed that, after the information that we saw yesterday, it should have begun a year ago.
Well,
And one of the things, just to add on that, because I'm sure Councilman Merrick is trying to be polite about a few certain things that I don't have to be polite about.
yeah.
But when the county executive calls this a crisis and says that on July the 15th at a council meeting this is going to be discussed, and then decides to go to Washington to tour the White House, no specific business, county business was being done apparently, just a tour of the White House. The director of administration was not at the council meeting yesterday. The assistant director of administration was not at the council meeting yesterday. So,
And the assistant, the deputy director of public works wasn't there either.
no. So,
I mean,
you know,
it's excusable that one or more of these people may not be there, but you're talking none of those.
Yes, and you would think if the county executive is calling this a crisis, which truthfully she has spoken the truth, it is a crisis,
Okay.
that the landfill is going to be full and might have to close. But where's everybody? She continues to tout the lack of communication between the executive branch and the legislative branch and the council.
When we don't communicate and collaborate, this is what happens. You get reactive legislation to share the information that we've gathered from Maryland State Department of Environment, working hand in hand with our county attorney, making sure that we are following every state guideline that we are supposed to. She had planned to present this to you, that we could have a work session in the middle of July.
But when she has the opportunity to sit in a room with the council and discuss a major problem with the county.
I think it's important to understand that the reason we are in this situation right now with heightened awareness of the landfill is that we had a work session at the council meeting on June 3rd with solid waste, and it was a good, nice presentation. They gave us some landfill issues. And 1 week later, there was a plan announced at a haulers meeting that the council was not a part of to close the landfill in steps over the next 12 months because the landfill was filling up too fast. That plan was not shared with the council on June 3rd, but it was shared with the haulers on June 10th. I think that's important to note because that got everybody's attention, and that's what started this emergency legislation. And now the information is coming out that we really should have had months ago.
And I want to talk later about your visit to the landfill. I had also a great visit with Adam Corey last week. But for right now, let's talk about the presentation. What part of that information you said, it seems like we're in some serious trouble, or could be, especially if this construction gets delayed for anything from permitting to weather. Do you feel like the solutions are in place, that the citizens of Wacomico County are protected as much as they can be at this point?
I do. Yeah, there seems to be a pretty solid plan in place right now. It looks like if everything goes right, that the new cell will be operational in 1 year. And if that happens, we'll be in good shape. Mr. Corey's doing a good job out at the landfill, filling in the gaps, so to speak.
Okay.
And making the best use of the space that we have available in hopes that, we're trying to avoid a closure of the landfill. If the landfill has to close, we would have to ship the trash out of the county, and that becomes expensive. Nobody wants to do that. So we're trying to do that, not do that at all costs, avoid doing that at all costs.
One of the major talking points of this has been out-of-county trash coming into the county to the landfill. Do you feel like there's progress being made with that, with the landfill and the county, that they're going to start stopping some of this out-of-county trash from filling up the landfill?
It looks like the legislation that's being currently worked on is going to end up with no out-of-county trash is going to be accepted. Now, we're looking at out-of-county trash as the culprit of all this, or at least a major contributor of all this, but we actually have no data. There's no graph, there's no chart, there's no concrete data that says we have X number of tons of out-of-county trash in our landfill. It's very hard to track that. But it is contributing to the problem at the landfill, and in order to conserve space, the measure that we have to take is to not accept out-of-county trash.
Now, Adam Corey has brought up before that there's a 26% increase over the last couple of years. I think one of the terms he used yesterday was about 5 to 10% of it was out of county.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think when you tighten down on the out-of-county trash, how much tonnage do you think that's going to cut?
Not 25% of total tonnage.
Well, what do you think will be cut out?
Somewhere between 8 and 15%.
One of the interesting things I did is when my visit, I was there a little bit early. I actually talked to one of the drivers. Now, this was from one of the larger haulers, and I just asked him, one, does he feel like things are improving at the landfill itself, like the operations? And he didn't. He couldn't go on camera because he's on the clock. But the other question I asked, I said, do you feel like your route brings trash into this county? And he looked at me and goes, you can't do that. You can't bring out of county trash here. He goes, my company, we have trucks that stay in Wycomico County and some that stay in Worcester County. He says in Delaware, we could never bring somebody else's trash to that landfill.
If we can prevent whatever out-of-county trash there is from coming in, it will help preserve space in our landfill.
Was it addressed at all yesterday about the timeline of the permit, that the construction permit, like when they're going to apply for it, and maybe even should that have been applied for earlier?
Yeah, Mr. Corey addressed it yesterday, where we are on, just so the public understands, cell 7 is the last cell that is yet to be constructed on the existing footprint of the landfill. We are currently putting trash in cell 8. That appears to have 11 or 12 months left, and then cell 7, in theory, might last 3 years. Cell 7 should have begun, as I said, a year ago.
Well, maybe you can clarify or clear something up. When there was a question asked of Mr. Corey about the dates and how long the plans had been in effect for cell 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard, I believe I heard 2022, that there was a document that it had been approved and passed at 2022. So is that accurate? And if it is, then nothing has been done between 2022 and 2025.
Cell 7, we're expediting the best we can. Was it in fact way behind the timeline?
I actually was reviewing a letter that I thought about putting into this slideshow. There was an authorization to proceed in October of 2022 for cell 7. Yeah, for that.
Authorization to proceed.
Yeah, not necessarily with construction, but would have started the process we're working on with Darrell. That was October of 2022.
And that was to begin the permitting process, the construction documents, and so on, way back then, which normally it could take a year or more.
Well, and at that time, we didn't have a director of public works, but there were other folks who were operating the landfill at that time, right?
And that's another bit of unfortunate situation. We've had 5 different people oversee the landfill in the last 2.5 years since we've all been in office. So as you can
but
imagine,
not at the council's direction.
No.
Okay. I mean, who puts that person in place?
Well, the executive.
Okay.
So, but from an operational standpoint, if you can imagine having a new boss every 6 months, that doesn't do much for morale.
We have footage from July of 2023 where Heather Langford, who's still employed by the county, supervisor of engineers, was stating on her own at public comments that she was at the landfill, she was qualified. You're talking about a permit that was actually started just before our current county executive was elected. And then Adam Corey has spoken to me and at the presentation that this permit, the process was just started here recently in March of 2025. Is it reasonable to conclude there was a lack of oversight from was the most material issues being addressed at the landfill?
I don't think it was. If it was, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Jim, you've been very much on top of the comprehensive plans, the 10-year plans. Was there a lot of information that came out of yesterday's presentation that would surprise someone who was doing that due diligence you were doing on the comprehensive plans, but maybe hadn't had an update in the last 5 or 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, that yesterday's information was very informative, because when you look at the most recent comprehensive plan, it's almost everything where they deal with municipal waste, residential waste, commercial waste, industrial waste. It says in November of 2024, there are no plans to modify existing practices. So everything is good. Now, the interesting thing I found about that with the comprehensive plan is the wording in the comprehensive plan of November of 2024 is a cut and paste job of the comprehensive plan of 2014. So, it's and
you're the second person who's brought that up to me, that if you go back and look at the plan from 10 years ago, that it looks a lot like the 2024 plan.
It's cut and paste, and I mean, it's just the same information is in the same plan. I'll be honest about it. I've been very impressed with Mr. Corey. The more I listen to him speak, the county finally has somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're looking at the landfill and what needs to be done. Still concerns me a little bit, and this is a little bit off the subject, but it's a subject that the council is dealing with, and that is contractual services.
Well, one of them is for consulting on the landfill.
One of them
seems like it's going very well.
a previous director of administration for this county under 2 previous executives, and he is consulting. Well, if we're in such a mess with the landfill at this time, I'm not sure I want somebody consulting that's been involved in it for the previous 10 years. Because
and you are, the council is considering legislation to put some restrictions on how professional services are awarded, so that you all are much more up to date on how those contracts are written, correct?
Yeah, generally the council's not informed of those contracts, and we just want to be aware of what's being written and for who and for how long and how much money. It just basically boils down to fiscal responsibility
and the scope of work too, right?
Yeah.
So you could say, well, now it's done.
We find ourselves scratching our heads, asking some questions like what's going on, and we're just looking for a little bit more information.
Well, I want to bring Mike Goldberg in, and I want to talk more about your visit, my visit out to the landfill, and also the technical side of the construction, and just because this is some of the work he's done in his past career. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to actually go through some of the details of the construction phase of Cell 7 out at the landfill, and in hopes to avoid a phase closure. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. And as we said in the last segment, we wanted to talk a little bit more of the specifics and the timeline of the construction phase for Cell 7 out of the landfill. In order to talk about that, I brought in Mr. Mike Goldberg from Delmar. And thank you for sticking around, Councilman Merritt.
Absolutely.
So you were at the work session on Tuesday, July 15th, and you had a chance to see Adam Corey's presentation. It was a very impressive presentation, right?
Yes, it was.
Our currently introduced legislation, and we're not going to dwell on that. Everybody's seen it. We're going to talk about the refuse disposal permit and its language, tonnage trends, where we've been in the past 3 years, out of county waste, our history and recent timeline as far as going back to where our previous geosyntech consultant volumetric analysis that was performed. We're going to talk about where we are currently with volumetric analysis, and that leading up to the identification that we got an issue we got to address right now. Our current operational status, what Cell 7 looks like on paper, horizontal expansion, and then we'll wrap it all up for everybody.
I feel quite confident that Adam Corey is the right man for the job, that the problems out there are not originating in him by any means.
Well, I had a chance to go out last Friday and do a tour with him. He invited me with my camera. In fact, I'm going to air that interview separate from this episode because I want to be fair to that interview. And I've talked to PAC 14. They're going to drop that interview separate from this show. It will be like as an addendum, and I encourage people to see it. But Councilman Merritt, you also took your own tour on Wednesday, July 16th, right after the presentation.
Yes.
And I want to hear a little bit about what was your feedback? What was your sense after having been out there with them?
So I wanted to go back out there. I took a tour right after we were all sworn in, and I invited Councilman Ennis, who just joined us on the council, to come with us. We spent a lot of time talking and asking questions and getting answers and looking at things on the computer, graphs and charts and documents. And I agree that Mr. Corey he knows what he's doing out there.
Well, there was some things I saw that, in my background is agriculture, it's similar to environmental science. But we passed the storage area for the used oil and for the antifreeze, and one of the things that's really key there is secondary containment. So you hope that your bins never fail, but if they do, there has to be a secondary way of keeping it from spilling over. He showed me that, and also a standard operating procedure if there is a spill, which is really key. I mean, things will happen, but you have to be prepared. We went up the hill, and I'm sure you did as well. We looked down on the leachate ponds, and there's two of them that were built in the early 90s, but one of them is drained all the way down. It only has rainwater in it. That one actually failed several months ago and did not leak any leachate out. They worked it out with the roads division in the city of Salisbury, and they were able to pump it out and get that processed like it should. But we are down to one leachate pond, which is enough unless that one fails. And then I did get to go over to the recycling center and see just how well they're trying to redirect as much refuse out of the landfill as possible. What was there any takeaway besides looking at cell 7 and cell 8 outside of those two things that really kind of took you by surprise?
I was able to get a visual of how much room is left.
Okay.
And we're not building a box here. The cells, they have to slope. So if you stand there and watch them for a half an hour and one truck right after the other going in there and dumping and then pushing and packing, it's not hard to grasp how fast it's going to fill up.
Talking over at cell 8 and showing footage of these two areas. Cell 8's where they're working now, and they're building it up, and they can go up all the way up to 220 feet, but they have to have access to get up that high.
Yes.
Next to it, like almost as a twin cell 7, which is at the corner of Naylor Mill Road and Brick Kiln Road. So that's actually the lowest point on that side at this point. He showed me where the collection for the leachate is just, he's having to have it raised a few feet so they don't have to dig out some old trash.
Right.
That would then have to go into cell 7 or cell 8.
Cell 8, yes.
Which would only fill it up faster. Mike, this is where I want to ask you. You've seen the plans for the construction of cell 7 with the liner and the leachate pumps and
Actually, not for cell 7. We have not seen the plans
because they're
for
not
that
done
yet.
Yeah.
But it's going to be generally the same as the construction drawings for cell number 8. They're twins, more or less.
Okay. So you heard in this presentation yesterday the timeline for construction. Could you do a little review of what that's likely going to look like?
Well, the timeline is we have to consider not just construction but design.
Okay.
Drawings are somewhere between 75 and 90% complete. Now, my question is, and I talked about this on last week's show, that once you get to around the 80% complete level on the construction drawings, that's close enough to begin the construction bidding process. But it doesn't sound like it's going to start for several more months. There could be some reasons for that I'm simply unaware of.
I mean, he told me in my visit that he hoped to get the request for a proposal out in August at some point.
In any event, once the construction drawings are completed and all of the necessary approvals and permits have been secured, the construction phase will take somewhere around a year, and it really is contingent on weather conditions. I think they're looking at best case scenario Worst case scenario could be a whole nother story. It could delay the process, completion of construction for a number of months. We just won't know until Mother Nature does her thing this winter.
Did you get a chance to see the saddle areas that
Yes.
that he was filling in? I mean, from cell 10 and cell 9,
Yes.
they all kind of meet up with cell 8. Mm-hmm. And we're talking access point. That's a little bit hard to understand. I did get some footage out there, but you have to have a road to get there. So you can't just say, well, we're going to airlift some trash and just lay it there.
Right.
You have to have a road, and then when you have the road, then you have to take the road back out. I've heard anywhere from 85 days to 120 days for construction, but maybe a year, especially if we don't know what the weather conditions will be like. But it does sound like, from my tour, and I'm wondering if you got the same instance, Adam Corey is looking for places, legal places in the airspace from cell 9 and 10 and 8, once 8 gets built up, that they could maybe buy another 3 to 6 months. How do you feel like that fits into the emergency legislation that you all are trying to pass that may also address the out-of-county trash?
Well, again, the point of the emergency legislation is to allow the landfill time to build the next cell and then ultimately go into what's called the horizontal expansion into the property across the street and not have out-of-county trash come in and keep the landfill open all at the same time. Because again,
Mike, your experience with working with engineers, construction contracts, doing due diligence for bank work, time frames matter. You've had a chance to listen to the presentation, and we probably lost 2 years, most of the last 2 years, to getting cell 7 off the ground. If you were financing this, if you were part of a group, where would you be looking to find out where that ball got dropped? Do you see any obvious signs?
I think the problem is very obvious. The prior engineering firm who had prepared construction drawings for other cells, a very well qualified firm, has a terrific reputation. Back in September of 2022, they were ready to go.
Now that would have been just before the county executive.
That would have been 2 months before the current county executive, Ms. Giordano, took office.
Okay.
But they had already created a project schedule, and that project schedule provided for engineering and design to begin in the first quarter of 2023.
Okay.
Well, that's not what happened. The simple fact is we are approximately and at least 18 months behind that schedule. It does not appear that the county executive prioritized this important project that impacts every single resident of this county. And now we're dealing with the fallout from that.
Councilman Mayor, what is the next step? I mean, you're going to have another meeting. You go 3 weeks before you have your next meeting in the first part of August. What's going to happen at the next meeting? Is this legislation? Is there going to be a public hearing at that point?
not sure yet. We haven't set the agenda for the next meeting yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's going to come at some point in August.
It does. Yeah, it has to.
Do you know if the county executive is still planning on following through with her phase closure on Saturdays at the landfill starting in August?
We were told that if we could put legislation in place that would remove allowing out-of-county trash as a possibility, then they would not have closing the landfill as an option.
But you won't be able to do that before August 1st.
No.
But the big question is, what does that resolve? All it does is create a backlog of trash.
Yeah, closing-
What's not dumped today is going to have to be dumped tomorrow.
Closing the
It doesn't do
landfill is not
anything.
going to solve the problem.
Yeah. I had a chance to ask Adam Corey in my interview last week, and again, that whole interview, or that interview will be aired separately. He really couldn't make a case that it would diminish the amount of trash unless we were to close it multiple days, and that wasn't supposed to start till October 1st, but hopefully before that we even get to that point, because it being closed on a Saturday and a Monday where it's already closed on Sunday, that may be a public health crisis in itself.
Well, that would impact your restaurants You can imagine a high-volume restaurant having a busy weekend. Imagine what that odor problem that would cause on this plan. Are we going to create a rodent problem, which becomes a health issue?
Philadelphia and New York would say yes.
Yeah.
Could we maybe catch back up with you in another 2 months and just get a
Sure.
follow-up to exactly what's going on? I think
Yeah.
having someone with your background and your ability, your willingness to go out there and find your own answers, like to just see what you've seen. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
And, thanks for watching this segment of Open Agenda. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. So we've had a chance to sit down with Councilman Jeff Merritt and find out his take on the work session and his tour of the landfill after meeting with Adam Corey. What questions do you still have remaining, Jim?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is how, if they claim that the 26% increase in the trash is due to out-of-county people, and they're going to restrict out-of-county people from dumping, I find it a little hard to comprehend that a quarter of our trash at the landfill is coming from out of county. I'm sure we have a good amount that's coming, but 26% is a lot of garbage coming from out of county. So,
Mike, what questions do you still have remaining?
Why did we get such a late start? I think we know the answer to that. I think we've developed the answers to that question throughout the discussion on this show, and that seems to ride on the executive branch of the county government. I also would be interested in finding if Mr. Corey's design and construction schedule is realistic. I think it's going to be close. I think he's right. It's going to be tight. The executive has claimed she has full operational control and that it's only the county council's job to appropriate funds. Well, it's true that she does have operational control, and therefore the administration is the culpability for this problem lies with the administration. The county council has granted all funding requested by the executive branch of government. Recently, up to, I think it was $10.5 million was bonded.
yeah, the only thing the council has turned down from the executive's request for the past 2 years with the landfill has been the tipping fees. And they haven't turned them down. They have worked to try to give some type of leadway or notice to the businesses, the contractor haulers who have contracts with municipalities and individual homeowners that, they need to know in advance so they can set their rates, not all of a sudden be told 2 weeks from now, we're going to raise your rate.
I have my own question, and it comes from another item that was on the agenda yesterday. It was discovered that the executive's finance department has transferred $2.5 million without notification to the council until after the fact. Now, my understanding is legally that's all they have to do.
Yes.
But we didn't know that we had a landfill issue 30 days ago. When you see that kind of number be transferred, and a lot of it be transferred into the pension fund, it makes me wonder what else we don't know. So today, June 17th or July 17th, it is the landfill. But what's August 17th look like?
There's going to be something out there, from the history of how this administration operates, how they, work behind closed doors. They keep not only citizens in the dark, but they keep our legislative branch in the dark.
$2.5 million is a lot of money, and $500,000 of that came from the roads department. And I just remember about 18 months ago, the executive's office was at the county council asking for $1 million to pave half the road, and now we have $500,000 not used in paving in the fiscal year 24 that we just wrapped up. I'm sorry, fiscal year 25 that we just wrapped up, and yet I can take you down to Design Road and show you parts of roads that are crumbling, that are emergency access roads. They're highly traveled. So if we take this landfill and then take this type of action on other issues, could be funding the pension fund, but it also could be paving roads. We don't know where this ends. Thank you, gentlemen, both for coming in to speak with us. Thanks for being at the meeting, asking good questions. And we're going to continue to follow the story, and we'll follow back up in a few weeks as more details come out. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Can anybody do a bad Jersey accent?